So Article 33 of the UN Convention Against Corruption deals with the protection of whistleblowers. And I have the definition in my slide. And I think we've all seen during COVID-19 just how the global community has failed to protect whistleblowers. We've seen around the world whistleblowers, witnesses, civil society activists, as well as journalists face threats, intimidation, and retaliation because of their involvement in uncovering and reporting on corruption. Now, in most countries, the legal systems that are in place today do not provide adequate protection for whistleblowers. In the political declarations, there are two sections in particular that pertain to whistleblower protection. That's Preventative Measure 21 and 30. Now, the language in the political declaration demonstrates that it seeks to protect those who report cases of corruption, and those people are more commonly called whistleblowers. And the declaration addresses their protection in a number of ways. And I won't be able to kind of walk you through much of what the declarations say, but I'll keep them in the background in my PowerPoint slide. I'm just going to share some highlights with you. The declaration commits to promoting active participation of individuals and groups outside the public sector in prevention of and the fight against corruption. It also commits to respecting, promoting, and protecting the freedom to seek, receive, and publish and disseminate information about corruption. Also, it commits to providing a safe and enabling environment for those exposing, reporting, and fighting corruption, and as appropriate for their relatives and other persons close to them. In addition, it commits to supporting and protecting any person, which is excellent, who identifies, detects, and reports in good faith, and we're going to talk about in good faith a little bit more in a moment, and on reasonable grounds, corruption related to offenses against any unjustified treatment. In addition, there's language in there about providing and enabling a confidential complaint system and programs and to increase awareness of such measures. So there's some sort of system in place or intentions to have some system in place for confidentiality and making safe disclosures, which is also very important. So I'm just going to go over, a little bit with you what's kind of missing in the declaration. One thing that I observed is that there's a lack of specificity. So the devil's really in the details here. So how the wording of these commitments are understood, interpreted, and implemented is really important. So good faith, for instance, that language has been used to put a whistleblower's motives on trial. And the best practices for whistleblower rights is that the whistleblower's motives for blowing the whistle should be irrelevant. If they reasonably believed that the information and evidence that they submitted was true, that should be enough to provide protection. And so that is one thing that I think really could be addressed in kind of two different ways. You can either refine the definition of good faith so that it doesn't put a whistleblower's motives on trial during the process, or you can remove the poison pill entirely from whistleblower protection. And that would make it consistent with the objectives of the convention, which is to protect whistleblowers who are coming forward with a reasonable belief that they have evidence of corruption that they are trying to share with you. They should not be punished for doing that. So that's the That's the objective and intention here. So in addition, corruption fighting really should be broader than just employee witnesses. You need more than just employees. You need, any person. And so just to take it a step further, another sort of recommendation is that any citizen who provides evidence could include both a legal person and a natural person. So you can define the definition to include both legal persons like a business or a natural person, so that they can make disclosures, and that would be consistent with international law. And also, another thing that's missing is commitments that are free of vague qualifiers that are subject to abuse. We see a lot of that in the whistleblower protection commitments in the declaration. So there shouldn't be any exceptions that undermine the purpose of whistleblower rights. Exceptions, when you have them, they really have to be carefully defined, don't conflict with that objective. So it's going back a little bit to the fact that the devil's in the details, and we need to unpack some of these a bit more and be cautious about using that. So what action is needed? There's kind of four main things that I wanted to discuss. First is process. Public participation and buy-in is critical here. It's important that we create an active process and role for civil society in offering their expertise to lawmakers on whistleblower legislation, and a role for monitoring the enforcement of whistleblower laws. Now, second is executing the vision. That's to turn the values that are in the declaration into concrete standards. And that's where we really want to pay attention to the details. Now, another thing that's really needed at this point is legal action. All right, so there's no language explicitly, in the declaration about passing best practice whistleblower laws. And so it's really important that member nations have best practice whistleblower laws, and those should include the best practices. And there's global consensus on what those are, and those can be utilized to help that process. And finally, on implementation, member states should ensure that there's transparent implementation in practice of whistleblower laws. And Government Accountability Project and the International Bar Association did a study, and we really found that there was a lack of transparency and openness in how these laws were working in reality. And that's going to end up being really important. One of the main issues that we observed in every country in our study was that there was a lack of transparency about settlement agreements. So something that we really recommend is having more transparency about settlement agreements, because if your country is settling whistleblower cases, that's a sign of a healthy system. That's a sign that the whistleblower got a timely and affordable relief in their retaliation case. And right now, we don't know anything about how these sort of informal or remedial programs are working in terms of mediating disputes. So that's kind of another ask, is that in the implementation that there be openness as well as commitments to make sure that, beyond just paper rights, that we're enforcing them in reality. So that's all for me today. Thank you so much.